Okay, so we're starting Daf Nun Hey. We're at the bottom, about 6 lines up, Meisvei. So we were just discussing the Shita of Rav Acha bar Chanina, who said that for each Musaf you add, if you have multiple Musafs, you blow 9 tekiyas for each Musaf. So we're going to ask Kasha on that. Meisvei, we'll ask Kasha from the Brayso, Rosh Chodesh Echaliyas b'Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh that falls out on Shabbos, Shir Shel Rosh Chodesh, Deicha Shir Shel Shabbos. So the Havamina we're saying is that the Shir of Rosh Chodesh will knock away the Shir of Shabbos. The Issa, if we pile on multiple Musafim on top of each other, Lema de Shabbos, Lema de Rosh Chodesh. So now what we're saying is like this. When do we blow the Tekiyas? The Tekiyas is based on the Shir. The Tekiyas that we blow is based on the Shir. We would do it at the time of Musafin, we would do it at the time of the Nisuch, of the Yayin, and therefore we're automatically assuming that if I have multiple Tekiyas, I would have multiple Shir, and if I had multiple, based on the multiple carbon Musafin, so it kind of would all flow. Multiple Musafin would require multiple Shiras, which would require multiple Tekiyas. They would go all in line. So what we're saying is, why do I have to be Deicha? Just because I have two, say them both, if you, Rav Acha, are correct, and when I have two Musafim, I would blow for both, so too the Shir should apply. We should say both Shirim. We should say both Shir. So I'm Rav Safar, my Deicha. No, we do say both Deicha Lekadem. What it means is that we put Rosh Chodesh in front of Shabbos. In fact, the Gemara, why are you putting Rosh Chodesh in front of Shabbos? Really, you do say both. That's how Rav Acha would answer. Good, so we answer the kasha. Now, why? Why do we put Rosh Chodesh in front? By my Tadir B'Shein Tadir Kodem. You would go based on what is more regular. So Amar Rav Yechanan Leida. It was a special siman that they went ahead and slid Rosh Chodesh to the front, the Shir of Rosh Chodesh, Leida Shehokva Rosh Chodesh Bizmanei. To let everybody know, and Rashi explains that because could be that there were times where the Levana was only seen by 2 people in the whole Klal Yisrael. So a lot of people didn't see it. So people might think that it wasn't seen or done at the proper time, that it wasn't seen. That was Bezdin's way of certifying the results of Rosh Chodesh, was to go ahead and they would put the Shir first. That was a public display of saying, no, we went through the process and it is Rosh Chodesh today. Frekti Gemara, that's the hecker that they made. There was another hecker. Did Tanya, did Tanan, like we learned in the Mishnah. Chelvei Tamid Shal Shachar. So we discussed this in Shkolim, that we're discussing the location. So, and we discussed this in Yuma as well, that there were two, they brought the chalavim and all the parts that went on the Mizbeach for the carbon tamid was done in 2 parts. First they put it on the Mizbeach, then they went around and did other parts of it, and then they brought it up as a separate avodah from the foot, or from the bottom of the Mizbeach to the top of the Mizbeach. So it wasn't at the time where they went up the kevesh a little bit or put up the kevesh. That wasn't when they did the Haktarah. The Haktarah came later. So they would put it there. So where would they set it? So on the bottom half, bottom b'mizrach, on the east side, that's the right. So if you're facing the foot of the kevesh, the bottom right half, bottom right quadrant, that was for the Tamid Shal Shachar. For Shal Musafin, and the Musafin, Tanam Echatzi Kevesh V'Lamata. That was the bottom left quadrant of the Mizbeach, B'Mariv. Vilshal Rosh Chodesh Nitanim Tachas Karkav Mizbeach. Now the Karkav, we discussed this before, the Karkav was the middle, right? So we had Amma Yisayid, it went in, then you had 5 Ammas, that was the Karkav, and then it went in an Amma, right? So that's 5 plus 1 is 6, so it's 6, and then another 3 up to that's 9 was the floor of the Mizbeach. Then you had another Amma Karen, that's how you had a total of 10, but 9. So 2/3 of the way up was the Karkav. 6, 1, 5. Okay, that was the Karkav surrounding the Mizbeach. That was the band around there that the Kahanim used to go to sprinkle the dam on the Karen. They would go there. Okay, so anyways, so they put it on the way Rashi learns is they put it on the kevesh. Essentially, if the Karkav is 2/3 of the way up, so also on the kevesh, what we're saying is Tamid Shel Shachar, and Musaf would be on the bottom half, and Rosh Chodesh would be above it. That's what we're saying, that it would be on the 2/3 level, so further up the kevesh, and that is V'amar Rav Yechanan. Why did they do this in a vare of the Rosh Chodesh. That was the siman to show that they went through the proper process and that Bezdin was Makadosh Bismane. So the Gemara says, Trei Akerav Dinan. You're right. They both work. The Chazi Hai Chazi. Whoever saw one, saw one. V'chazi b'hai chazi. Whoever saw the other one, saw the other one. In other words, there's nothing wrong with us having two symbols to show that Bezdin went through the process. Okay, good. So that we answered for Rav Acha. Again, the answer is that we do both shirim. It's just a question of which one goes first. And therefore, you had no kasha that how could Rav Acha say you pile on additional shofar blowings for a blast for additional musafim. Meisvei, the Tani Rav Bar Shmuel, Yachol Kashem Shatoikin Al Shabbos Bifnei Atzvai, Ba'al Rosh Chodesh Bifnei Atzmai. You might think that just like we blow for Shabbos and for Rosh Chodesh, right? In other words, Shabbos not on Rosh Chodesh, we would blow for Musaf. And so for Shabbos, not Rosh Chodesh, we blow for Musaf. And for Rosh Chodesh, on a weekday, we'd also blow for Musaf. Okay? Independently, Kach you taken al kol Musaf. You might think that if Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh fall on the same day, you would blow twice. Chaser. Point is, you can't get around that. The Brisa is clearly saying we don't pile on for each Musaf. Tiyufta, the Rav Acha tiyufta. Now, my Talmuda, how is Roshei Chad Shechem telling me to limit it to just one when I have Shabbos and Musaf of Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh that I only blow for one of them? So Amar Abaya, Amar Kra Uvarashe Chad Shechem. Again, it's Chaser. Hukshu Kol Chadashim Zelazeh. That we all months should be hookish. Okay, and what we're saying is that just like it's not going to fall out on Shabbos every month, it has to be the same amount of Tkiyas Shofar by Musaf by each Musaf Rosh Chodesh. That's what the pasuk is coming to tell me, and therefore it makes no difference if it's Shabbos, Chol, Yontif, Rosh Hashanah. It makes no difference. You're always going to just blow the same amount of shofars, shofar blasts, and the only way to ensure that is by saying that you don't pile on Musafim. Rav Ashi Amar a little bit different. Ksiv Chad Shechem u'Ksiv u'Varashe. It says Chad Shechem. And it says Varashe. So which month could have two Rosh Chodeshes, so to speak? Havayim is a Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a Rosh Hashanah for the year, and it's a Rosh Chodesh. It's two heads on the first day of Tishrei. The pasuk wrote it Chaser without the Vav. To tell me Chadhi. Okay, so either way you learn how to explain the Brisa, it's clear that you'd only blow one set of 9 Tkiyas, right? And therefore, one set of 9 shofar blowings, and therefore we see clearly not like Rav Acha, you don't pile on. That's tiyufta number 1. V'oid, we're going to ask another tiyufta, again going into the shir shel yoyim. B'chol shel moed. So now we're talking about which shir shel yoyim did they say on Chol Hamoed. B'chol Hashemayim, Berishayin, Mahim Oimrim. On the first day, what did they say? Havol Hashem b'nei Elam. So that is mitoich, because we're talking about the Nisach Hamayim. We want to say Kol Hashem al Hamayim, right? We know that B'chag mitoich al Hamayim. So therefore, we want to start off by mentioning Mayim. So that's Havol Hashem b'nei Elam. B'sheni Umaha Yu Oimrim. Okay, so that was all nice and for the Yantif, but by day 2, we're already into Musar. B'sheni Mahu Oimrim Ularasha Amar Aleikim. Meaning that is Musar, and that is, Rashi explains that we're saying to the people that gathered in the Azara that you're here, make sure to make the most of it, right? Make sure, what's the point of coming to the Azara to come to be close to Hashem if you're not going to do tshuva? Make sure you do tshuva. Okay. Also, Rashi says another thing it tells you in that Mizmar, it says Zaveach le'lekim toida v'shalim le'elyon nedarecha. And since Sukkot is the last, we know there's an Isser Bal Ta'achar, you're not allowed to keep your Nadarim and Nadav has passed 3 regalim. You have to bring it to Gimel regalim. Since Sukkot is the last one, so we're issuing an extra warning. That's why we say this Mizmar on day 2. B'shlishi ma'ho yo'emrim, what's the third Shisha Yom for the third day? Mi yakum li im mireyim. Okay, that was a nod to the times of the Tsarais in Bayesheni. Okay, that David HaMelech was foretelling that even in Bayesheni, when we're under foreign rule, Ma'achei Paras, Ma'achei Roimi, Ma'achei Yavain, and it's very difficult to come to the Beis HaMikdash. Still, it's a shira that the Bnei Yisrael were coming anyways to be Oyel Regal, even though they had these foreign. They were under foreign rule, and it was very, very difficult. Again, back to Musar, and here what we're saying is make sure, Binu, understand, Bayrim, the fools, that people think that, now, Sukkot was the time where everyone was Chag Asif, where they brought in your crops. So it's a way to say, don't try to cheat the system on Trumas and Maasros. Binu Bayrim, make sure that you give the Trumas and Maasros that you're supposed to be giving. Okay, why? Because as it says later there, it says, Hanoita Eizan Allah Yishmam Yetzer Ayin Hala Yabit. Again, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is warning us to make sure that we give the Trumas when it's time to bring in our crops, that we make sure we give the Trumas and Maasros we're supposed to. Okay, that is, again, on Divrei Tanchumin. So we say that is could be as chus, that this is talking about, this shir speaks about the mayim. Al-mayim shenidoin lehem b'chag lefi ma she'ani b'chencha afsek lach. Okay, and then it ends off, Ani Hashem hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim ercha b'chem aleyu, again talking about the bracha that comes al yidei the yontif of mayim. Okay, that's why we say this one. V'shishim mayu oimrim yimoitu kol moistei aretz, that the supports of the land will collapse. Again, it refers to the maasros. Ani v'rash hatztiku, referring to Trumas and Maasros, making sure that you're giving the Maasros you're supposed to, and that somebody who doesn't, right, it says, Lo yadav lo yavinu, b'chashecha yishalachu, okay, that the penalty for that is Misa, okay, and this is the time that we say, right, he brings a mission of us, Rashi says that Arba Prakim, that the 4 times a year, it's more shayach that dever, that you'll get a plague, and Matzei Chag is one of them because of Gezel Matan Asaniyim. Again, so it's referring to Gezel Matan Asaniyim, which Sukkot is the time for that. Okay, but the point is, Ve'imchal, so Rashi spends a lot of time going through all these, so I felt like we had to mention at least some of the reasons for it. Okay, so, but what are we bringing this here for? We're trying to shlug up Ravacha, another shlug. So what do we say over here? Let's say one of these 6 days of Chol Hamoed, right? 5 and 1 of Shana Rabbah. So one of these 6 days, if one of them falls out on Shabbos, guess what happens? Yimoitu Yidche, the last one gets pushed off. You just don't say it. Okay, so now there's our kasha. If you're saying we pile on, why are we just pile it on? Pile Shabbos on, double them up, whatever it is. The point is, why are we pushing off one? Elamai, we see that we don't pile on. So now, Rav Safra Manach Bu Simani, now we have Simani to remember what the orders are. Rav Safra said it's Humbahi, which is Binu Ba'erim, and then Hasi Roisi, and then Yimoitu. Okay? Actually, Mi Yakam Liim Mereim, Binu Ba'erim. So basically the base comes before the hay. Rav Papa Manach Bu Simani, Humhabi. Right? He's saying that the hay comes before the base, you switch around the base and the hay. Binu Ba'erim and Hasi Roisi. Okay, and as far as the order of the Shira, we're just finishing up that price of Simanech Ambuhi de Sifri. That's talking about the throngs of people coming to the base medrash, coming to school. Okay, but the point is that we say that Sifri, referring to Rav Safra, that's just a simon how to remember it, said Ambuha, that he said the base comes before the Hey Binu comes before Hanoite, Binu Bayrim comes before Hasi Reisi, and not like the other one. Anyway, the point is, Tiyufta de Ravacha Bar Chanina Tiyufta. We see we don't pile on. We say that if you're gonna be short one, right? So if you have Shabbos and you have to say the Shir Shal Shabbos on one of these 6 days, then just get rid of the last one. Push the last one off in Gansen. Why? Just pile it on. Elamai, we see we don't pile on. So too, we don't pile on. Now, by Shiras, we don't pile on. The Tchiyas that come Mikayach, the Shira, we don't pile on. So we see we don't pile on for Musaf. Second shlug of Ravacha. Frekti Gemara, Ravacha v'charnina kra umas nisa ka'amar. He learned, he had a whole limit over there from Yisku, right? It wasn't just that he decided this Shita all on his own. Okay, it said, Yisku b'chatzotzor she'in tamal Yisku shekvar never uskatam b'chatzotzor. Listen, on yesterday's daf, umal tamal loimer Yisku akol if musafin taikin. So he had a whole limit over there. So what is that limit coming to tell me? Amar Ravina, we have 2 ways to either understand it. Loimer shema arichin b'tchiyos, that you would elongate the tchiyos, meaning you only did the 9, but because you had to cover multiple shirais, so you would elongate, multiple nisachim. Right, so we did the shear during the Nischei Yayin. So if you had multiple musafim, you had multiple nisachim. You had multiple nisachim, so we had to elongate the tkiyos to make sure to stretch it out. So that's the one way to learn the pasuk. Or Abanan dekesarim mishmei Rav Acha Amri loimer shem marba b'toikin. They would add additional as a covered yantif. They would add if the more occasions they were celebrating, the more blowers they would have. The more people they would have, kayanim or leviim, they would have I'm blowing the shofar. Va'anan, now, in regards to us, so he's going now, Chol Moed Sukkos. What do we do? Va'anan de'islay trei yoyme heicha abdinan. So what do? Right? The problem is like this. If first day of Sukkot, the way, right, we're talking about Anan b'chutz la'aretz. That's what we're talking about. Talking about Anan b'chutz la'aretz. So now, first day of Sukkot, we say, it's okay. So Pesach, it's less of an issue. Because let's say Pesach, so the first day of Yontif, we say, the Musaf for the first day. The Pesach for the second day, we say the Musaf for the first day. Pesach for the third day, we say there's only one Musaf for Chol Hamoed, meaning that if you look at the covered Musaf, we're going to get to the Karbanos here in a second, Pesach, they're all the same, except for the first day, and we have just the first day, so we can just lop off that first pasuk. And we start from Beit Raftem, boom, we have the same covered Musaf. But Sukkot, where we have, and we're going to discuss this, so we might as well give the preview now. What are the Karbanim Musaf for Sukkot? So for Sukkot itself, you have 2 Elim, 1 Seer, 14 kvasim on every day, and the Parei Chag, the famous Parei Chag, which are Nismatim. So on the first day you have 13, the second day you have 12, it goes from 13 down to 7. Now the problem is, what do you do on the first day? Okay, well, we know what you do on the first day. You say 13, right? You say the Musaf of, or you did the Musaf of 13, this is what we say, Musaf of 13, 14 kvasim, 2 Elim, 1 Seer. Good. Now, what do you do on the second day? You can't say that it's Chol because we were Nahig Yantif. Okay, fine. So we have to say the first day one again. Okay, what do you do on the first day of Chol Hamoed? Okay, so he wants to know, what do you do? So Abaya Amar Sheni Yedche. So you know what you do? You completely whitewash the second day, right? The second day, meaning the Musaf for the second day, and by the time we get to our first day of Chol Hamoed, which is the third day, we start B'Yom Shlishi, and we just totally skip over B'Yom Sheni. Because on the second day of Yontif, we can't say B'Yom Sheni because in the Torah it's listed as a Chol, right? But we're still Neig, like it's Yantif the first day. Second day is Chol. So, Rava Amar Shvi Yidcha. He says, no, you follow the order. You always stay one behind. And therefore, you just get rid of the last one. Tanya Kavase de Rava. We see like Rava, we have a brisa like Rava. Imchal Shabbos liyos be'echad mehem yimoitu yidcha. The brisa said that if Shabbos falls out, so we see that when I have a Yom Kaddish and I necessitate to say a shear, a different shear than what the proper order is, when I get back to my order, right, I don't pile on. What do? Just drop the last one. So Shvi Yidcha. Okay, so Abaya said you either get rid of the second day. Rava says you lop off the last day, just ignore the last day. What do? How do we do? Askin Amim Rabbanardar Medalgi Dlugi. We skip. Okay, and Rashi explains, and we do this for the Kriya as well, that we read both. We skip around. Now, that was talking about for how we daven Musaf. Okay. But Rashi goes through a whole thing over here, and there's a 3 machlekes Tanaim. What do we do for the laning? Now Rashi says that really the only laning we care about is the maftir, the fourth aliyah, and we combine the 2 days. So on the first day of Chol Hamoed, we would say B'Yom Beis, B'Yom Sheni, B'Yom Shlishi. But he brings from his Rabbeim that for the first 3 aliyahs, we say the 2 stakos, aliyah number 1, aliyah number 2. So let's say on the first day of Chol Hamoed, we would do Yom Beis, Yom Gimel, and then on the third aliyah, we would go to the day ahead. And that's how we would follow it. Okay? The Rif says that we would say, again, it's similar, but we would say the 2 stakos, first 2 aliyahs, and then repeat the second one. So let's say on the first day of Chol Hamoed, we would do Yom Beis, Yom Sheni, Yom Gimel, and then again for the fourth aliyah we would do Beis Gimel, the combination of both. And Tosfos says that you would actually just alternate in order. So you have 4 aliyahs, you do Yom Beis, Yom Gimel, and Beis Yom Gimel again. Okay, but we are not like Rashi according to the Zakanim, we do again first day of Chol Hamoed, we would lane for Sheni, Shlishi, Ravi, we actually go a day ahead, and then for Musaf we go back to 2 and 3, and that's how we follow it for all 7 days. Okay, so we discussed the Yontav Rishon Shel Chag, Zak the Mishnah. So we said there were Yud Gimel Parim, Elim Shnayim, right? So the first day, again, those are our 13 Parei Chag. Elim Shnayim, Seer Echad, Nishta. Okay, so now like this. So there are 24 Mishmeres. The deal is, then we're going to see at the end, that you have a total of the Parei Chag would go, everybody would get equal amounts of Parei Chag. So when we're going to have an order, so let's establish, at least according to Rashi, there's machlekes here whether there was a pious for Sukkot at all. Rashi holds there was no pious for Sukkot. You'd have your 24 Mishmeres, and let's say on day 1, so the first 13 of the 24 got the Parei Chag. Then you had your 2 Elim, the next 2 got an Ayil, so that covered 15. And then you had your Sa'ir, those were like the good Karbanos, okay? So those, the first 16 got, and then what would happen? Now, the parim is what we kept track of. So let's hold there for a second. Okay, day 2 comes again, and I now have 12 parei achag. I start again from whoever didn't get parei achag. That's where I start from. So, meaning 14, 15, 16. So the last 11, essentially from 14 through 24, would get on day 2, plus the first mishmar would get again. And then we'd continue. So we follow the order of parei achag. That's like the most important one. So that's the one we wanted to track. Rashi holds there was no pious at all. We started from the first day with that. So again, you had 13 parei achag, the 2 elim, the 1 sa'ir. Those were the good karbanas. Now what I'm left with, let's say on day 1, that takes 16, right? 13, 2, and 1 is 16. I have 24 mishmeres. So my last 8 would get to 14 kvasim. So how would I do that? What I would do is, parim, elim shnayim, usir echad. So everybody got something every day. In other words, all 24 had to get. So 13, 2, and 1. So that took care of my 16. Now my last 8, nishtaru sham yud daled kvasim lishmayna mishmaris. So I'd be left with 14 kvasim for 8 mishmaris. So what did I do? So the next 6 on the list, I go down my 24. Again, 13, 2, 1, 16. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 all got 2. So that could give 12 of mine. And then the last 2, Vashar Echad Echad. Okay? Comes the next day, again, we continue with the param where we were up to. So numbers 14 through 24, and then number 1 again get for my 12. B'sheni, so and then what would happen? So then your mishmar number 2 and 3 would get elim. Your mishmar number 4 would get the Sawyer. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, who didn't get anything, right? Who didn't get anything yet because we started 14. So then we would split amongst those 9. We had B'sheni Chamishi Makrivim Shnayim Shnayim. So we had 9 people who needed to get on day 2. And we had 14 kvasim. So 5 of them would get 2. And then 4, Vashar Echad Echad, the 4 would get 1. Again, follow the same thing. So on day 3, I saw a chart published, I can send it up if anybody's having a hard time with this, but on day 3, okay, we would start param from the number 2, right? 2, 3, there were 11, okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, mishmar number 12, 13 and 14 would get Elin, 15 would get Seirim. Now my 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, okay, I missed one. But 10...
23 gets 2.
Fine. So the point is, there would be the last 10, now you had 10 left. Again, so on the third day, it's 11. 11, 2, and 1 is 14. So there was 10 who needed to get. 10 split the 14 kvasim. So how do you do that? So 4 each get 2 of the kvasim. Okay, Bashar echad echad. Okay, so that would take care of 6 and 8, right? 8 doubled up by 4. So 4 people would get 2, and then the last 6 would get 1. That's why I got 10. Again, follow the same system down. B'revi shloishim akrivim shnayim shnayim, v'ashar echad echad, v'chamishi shnayim akrivim shnayim shnayim, v'ashar echad echad, v'shishi echad makriv shnayim, v'ashar echad echad, v'shvi, okay, kulon shavin. What we're saying is like this. So on the 7th day, let's just take this. You could fill in your head all the blanks, or I could send a chart if anybody wants, or we could just give a word for it. But on the 7th day, you had 7 parei chag, because it was nismayit from 13 to 7, plus my 2 elim, plus my 1 seer. So that's 10. And I had 14 kvasim, so what we're saying is by the time you get to day 7, there were no doubling up of kvasim. Again, every mishmar got every day. Now, it turns out, how it works out is, if I take the parei chag and I go from 13 to 7, that is a total of 70. There's 70 parei chag. 24, so what that means is, if there were 24 mishmeres, that each mishmar got it 3 times, except for 2 mishmeres only got it twice. 24 times 3 is 72. I'm too short. I only have 70. Okay? So, got that? So, every mishmar got it 3 times, except for there were 2 mishmeres who only got it twice. Now, Rashi holds, like I said, there was no pious for the first days at all. Other Rishonim argue, and they say that there was a pious to determine. So the way I explained it was Rashi. Day 1, the first 13 mishmeres got parei achad. Day 2, it was 14 through the end, plus number 1, etc., etc. The other Rishonim hold that there was a pious to determine where we would start the parei achad. That was most important. And there's a third shita that holds that also there was a pious not only for that, but also for some of the other karbanos. It was just not for parei achad. Okay, now, B'shmini, on Shmini Atzeres, what happened? Chazru l'payas kibur galim. So we went back, okay, to regular pious, meaning, like we discussed in Yuma, that we only had one par. We went back and we created a lottery on the 8th day. Amru, now, this is going back to how we did it for Parei Achad. Like we said, you don't start again. Just because everybody gets a carbon on each day doesn't mean comes to day 2, you start the Parei Achad from the first Mishmar again. Well, you actually go back, or from wherever you started from. What happens is, you continue the Parei Achad, or Chayzer and Chalila. They go around. So everybody gets every day based on how we discussed it, based on how many karbanos there were. Okay. Zakta Gemara, name Masnis and Rabbi Hibelo Rabbanon. So we have a Machlekes Tanya, Par Haba, Bishmini Betchila, Mafais and Allah Diri Rabbi, V'chav Mayrim Achas Mishnei Mishmar, Shtoloi Shloshu, Beparim Oisei Esai. Right, so we're trying to say our Mishnah, which said that on the 8th day, meaning Shmini Atzeres, there was a payas, there's a lottery to determine who gets that par, because we don't continue, we don't pick up the order from where we left off from the day before. So it sounds like Rebbe, who says that, now, what we're addressing is there was a payas for the 8th day. Who was nichal in that payas? Was it everyone, all 24? Did we start again? Or was it just those 2 who were left out? The 2 who didn't get, of the 72, who got shorted on the 3rd round, is it those 2? So we're trying to say it's Rebbe. It sounds like everybody gets it. So the verse says, no, they would also need a pious. What we're saying is, it was either a pious or machlekes, whether the pious for the 8th day was amongst all 24 mishmaris, or just those 2. Kimana Zahadatanya, call mishmaris. So who would the following brisa go? I call mishmaris shones, umashalshes, chutz mishnei mishmaris. So like we explained that all mishmaris got 3 times. They got 3 parei achad, except for the 2 mishmaris, sheshonos ve'in mashlimas. They only got it twice, not 3 times. Nemo Rebbe he v'loy rabbanon. Because if we're trying to say that if it goes like Rebbe holds that when I did the pious on the 8th day, it goes back from the beginning. What we're saying is that the way we're understanding the brisa is, sorry, tough luck. Right, that everybody's in the pious again. That sounds like it's Rebbe. So the Gemara says, no, if you temur rabbanon, my loy shilshu parei achad. What we're saying is that they're not going to get a 3rd round of Parei Achad, but we would try to even out as much as possible. There's still one guy who's going to be short, but again, the Rabbanan Shita is that we would do the pious for the 8th day amongst the 2 who didn't get on the 3rd round, who didn't get on a 3rd Parei Achad. Okay? Like we said, that we follow the order around and around. Now, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Hani Shivim Parim, so the 70 Parei Achad keneged me. Why are there 70 parei achad? Keneged shivim umos. They're keneged the 70 nations. And why, again, and why dafka these? Why 70? And the Mefarshim explained, because these are mismatin v'holchen. They die down. So too, we're saying that the shivim umos eventually, right, will be left with that they are mismatim. Their influence will wane. Okay, now, anyways, par yechidi on Shmini Atzeres lama. Why is there only one par? Keneged uma yechida. Okay, for the special miyucha nation, meaning for Kal Yisrael, mashal melch basar v'dam, famous mashal. That we had a king, Shamar Lavada Vasili Suda Gedela. So he said, prepare a huge banquet. Liyam Achron, on the last day, you know what he did? He said, Amar Lo Yasili Suda Katana. Come, let's peel away, make a little Suda Kadei She'ehena Mimcha. I want to really enjoy your company. I don't want you to get lost in this whole huge crowd. Sha'avdu. Woe is to the Goyim, Sha'avdu Ve'in Yodim Ma Sha'avdu. They lost down, they don't even know what they lost. Why? Mizbeach mechaper aleim. Because of the shivim parei achad that was keneged umas ha'olam, it wasn't just keneged them. It means that it was mechaper for them. V'achshavim mechaper aleim. They don't have nobody to mechaper. Let's do one more sugya until we'll go a little further here. So now, b'shloisha parakim b'shana hayukol mishmaris shavais. So normally, right, the 24 mishmaris each got a week. Levanim Mikarav, like we'll see at the end, Levanim Mikarav Allah ha'avais, that they made a deal. So Mechagis and Rishonim exactly how it came about, what the din is, but they made a deal that they'll just basically create a rotation of the 24 mishmaris. Each one gets to serve a Shabbos. What that means is normally, if it's not Yontif, the Kohanim would get all the karbanos that were applicable for that week. So they would serve that week, they would do the Avodah for that week, they would get all the karbanos finished. Now what happened was, when it came to Regel, all the mishmaris came for the Shlosh Regalim. So what we're saying is, B'shlosh Parakim B'shana Kol Mishmaris Shavos, but for which karbanos? Just because, now that week belonged to somebody, belonged to one mishmar. So what we're saying is, and we're going to discuss this concept of switching mishmaris, so we have to get into it, there's 24 mishmaris. What we're saying is, during the week of Regalim, for the karbanos that are a murei regalim, uvechiluk lechem apanim. So what we're saying is that any carbon, when we said that all of the mishmeres come to serve the shalosh regalim, means that they would do the avodah for, and therefore we see that those go hand in hand. If you do the avodah of a certain carbon, you, the kohen, let's say all 24 mishmeres are doing the avodah, that means all 24 mishmeres are eating those karbanos as well. They get to eat those karbanos. They get the oiris of those karbanos. Now, which karbanos is it? The emuria regalim. Only the karbanos that are tied to the regel. So, like we're going to see, the musafin, right, of regel, meaning, but not the musaf of Shabbos, not the tamid, not the ones that weren't, only the karbanos that are tied to the regel would they get. And they would get the Shalmei Chagiga, the Chazei V'Sheik of the Chamei Chagiga from the Yisraelim who came to bring it there. But they would also get a V'chil Lechem Apanim, which we'll see that they would split. So normally, like we're going to see that the Lechem Apanim was split amongst the Mishmar that was leaving and the Mishmar that was coming, because Lechem Apanim, the changeover of Lechem Apanim, the switchover happened on Shabbos, and the Mishmaris, the switchover happened on Shabbos. So they would split it amongst, we'll see how they split it, but amongst the Mishmar that were leaving and that were coming. We had this extensively in Yuma. Okay, but on Shalosh Regalim, now what we're saying is, listen, if Shabbos falls out, on the Shabbos that falls out during the Regel, they would everybody that came to Yerushalayim to help serve, all 24 Mishmaros would split the Lechem Apanim during the Regel. Ba'atzeres, now what we're saying is on Shavuos, where you have not just, if Shabbos fell out on Shavuos, so you would have not just the Shtei HaLechem, which is chametz, a carbon of chametz, but also you would have the lechem apanim, which is matzah, non-chametz. Okay, so Omer Loi, what we say is helech matzah, helech chametz. What we say is that each mishmar will get some of each carbon. You don't say that some take the chametz ones and some take the matzah ones. They each get a helech from each of the shtei lechem and the lechem apanim. Mishmar shezmanei kavua. However, the mishmar, wherever they were up to in the cycle of the 24, that is manei kavua. Who makriv tmidim nidarim benadavis v'shar karbanos tzibur. So they would bring the karban tamid, meaning any karbanos not tied to the regel would go to whoever's mishmar it was during the regel. Okay, makriv tmidim nidarim benadavis v'shar karbanos tzibur. Umakriv esakol. They would bring everything else. We'll see what we are marba on makriv esakol. Now, zakta gemara murei regalim shegavayninu. Gemara says, what do you mean? What murei regalim are these kayanim getting? It's chatos. Right, the Musafim are all chatas. They go on the Mizbeach, they're all brought to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amar Rav Chisda Mashamar B'Regalim. What we're saying is the oiros, the hides of those, and the chazei v'shoik, which is basar of the shlamim that the Yisraelim brought. The Shalmei Chagiga. Tan Rabbanim. Minayin shekol mishmeres shavos be'murei regalim. So how do we know that all the mishmeres come to serve together? Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, Uva v'chol avas nafshoy v'sheires. That they all can come. What we're saying is all the Kohanim can come. When? Yachalaf b'shar Yom HaShana came, you might think this is anytime you want. Talmud Loimar, when do we say Uba b'chol avas nafshay? Whoever wants to come do avodah, you can do avodah. When do we say that? Me'achad shar echad loimarti el b'shar shekol Yisrael nechnasim b'shar echad. Only when everyone's coming together, meaning to the regalim. Let's do one more. Uvechilek lechem apanim. That we say that all the mishmeres, since they all came for shalosh regalim, they would all take part of the lechem apanim. If Shabbos occurred, or for the Shabbos that occurred during the regal, how would we know that they would all get it? The pasuk says, that they eat. That just like they are allowed to participate in the avodah, so too they participate in the eating. Now, frak the Gemara, what do you mean the eating? The eating of the karbanos? No, sorry, that's a standard rule. Anytime you are allowed to do the avodah, you eat. So why is it saying just like you're allowed to participate in the avodah, so too in the eating? Must be talking about an eating that's not tied to a carbon, right? Zakta Gemara, ma'achili limis karbanos mehasam nafka. We already learned from the pasuk la kaina makriv v'soy loy tiyeh. The kain who brings the carbon gets to eat it. Ella, we must be talking about what is something that only as an achila there's no avodah. Lachem apanim. You might think that the Kohanim can also participate in the chayvos, meaning let's say the tamid, the carbon musaf on a Shabbos, right? Karbanos that are not tied to yantif themselves. Except that there's an exception for what the rotation. That's referring to a rotation. That what does it mean they sold? They traded. Basically, the avos amongst themselves, the Kohanim decided to break into 24 mishmaros, And what we're saying is, except for Levan and Mimkar Ani b'Shabbos Atah b'Shabbatcha, that they made a deal who should serve. So what we're saying is that Levan and Mimkar Avos, that they don't all. This is part of that same pasuk. It says V'chol Avas Nafshoy Ma'achad Sharecha Levan and Mimkar Avos. Well, okay, that is all coming together. Those are all in the same parsha. What we're saying is, you get to all serve on the regalim. Only on the regalim you get to partake in the karbanos. But you don't get all the karbanos. You get levanim and karbalah avos. You only get the karbanos that are tied to the regel. That's what all kind of participate in. But the karbanos that are not tied to the regel, we would have to say that each. That would go according to the normal cycle for whatever that was.